36 past the hour, Vice President Joe Biden is doing little to quiet the chatter surrounding a possible 2016 run. Yesterday, at a pair of events honoring former Vice President Walter Mondale, Biden sounded much like a presidential candidate, especially when touting his role in the current administration's foreign policy.
It really matters. I mean, it really matters when people know you are speaking for the president and you have his confidence. And like you in foreign policy, if you notice, I will get sent to go speak to Putin or go speak to Erdogan or go speak to whomever. And it's because the Secretary of State, we've had two great Secretaries of State. But when I go, they know that I am speaking for the president. There is nothing missed between the lip and the cup, that whatever I say, the president is saying.
And later in that evening, Biden repeated a line that has been perceived as a critique of Hillary Clinton's comment during last week's Democratic debate when she said she was proud of the Republican enemies that she has made during her career.
It is possible, it is necessary to end this notion that the enemy is the other party. End this notion that it's naive to think we can speak well of the other party and cooperate. What is naive is to think it's remotely possible to govern this country unless we can. That is what is naive. The other team is not the enemy. If you treat it as the enemy, there is no way we can ever resolve the problems we have to, and you end up with the dysfunction that we're experiencing here in Washington.
Mike Barnicle, I was going to provide my analysis and say that Joe Biden has to make his decision and stop playing Hamlet. But I've got to stop first and say what he just said there would connect so much with Americans. We in the media talk about how divided America is. I'm telling you, it's a lie. It is a lie from everything I've seen over the past 8, 9, 10 years going around all across America. What Joe Biden said right there, if delivered by a strong candidate, could bring this country together. That is an inspiring message. And God bless Joe Biden for saying, I can disagree with the Democrat. And they're not the enemy. They're just the other side of this debate. That's powerful. I hope he jumps in the race. I hope he delivers that message. It will change the 2016 election. That said, Joe's got to make up his mind, Mike.
Well, yeah, he does, and hopefully his mind will be made up soon, probably within the next 2 or 3 days, we say again. But that's just Joe being Joe, and I'm wondering, as you just said, what you said about the other Joe, is if he said that on the stump throughout the country, where would the Freedom Caucus go with what he said? Because look at the difficulties Paul Ryan is having within his own party about that. But in any event, I digress.
Well, but I've got to say, though, again, this is one more example, though, of, I mean, if I were sitting in the Freedom Caucus, if I'd had John Boehner telling me what I was going to do before talking to me, it would be less about ideology and a top-down management structure that just doesn't work in the House of Representatives unless you get buy-in. What Paul Ryan did last night was he came in, he wagged his fingers, he said, these are my conditions, take them or leave them. Well, Paul wasn't on their side on immigration. Paul wasn't on their side on the bank bailouts. Paul wasn't on their side on Medicare Part D. Paul wasn't on their side on a lot of big issues that matter to conservatives like me. But that said, if you're going to listen, if you're going to work with me, if you're going to give me buy-in, I don't have to agree with you 100% of the time. And it's the same thing with what Joe Biden's saying right there. I may not agree with you 100% of the time, but we're on the same team. Let's work together. I will say I was deeply offended by what Hillary Clinton said last week when she said of all the enemies that she's made across the world, she's proudest of the Republicans who are now her enemies. First of all, that's a lie. I know Hillary Clinton. She doesn't think that way. But secondly, that is such a sad play to an angry base. that I think it demeans not only Hillary Clinton, but the Democratic Party itself. There are a lot of great Democrats out there, a lot of great Democrats that want leaders that know how to work with Republicans as well. And Hillary Clinton knows better than to talk that way. If she talks like Joe Biden, she might be shocked. She might actually get a lot more Democrats supporting her.
Well, you know, what we just heard the vice president say, Joe, though, speaks to something that you know, that Harold knows, because you both served in public office. Al Hunt knows this. Mark knows this, because covering Washington. What has been missing in Washington, clearly, if you speak to members of the House and the Senate from both parties, is the personal touch, the lack of communication on a personal level. Between the administration and members of the Senate and the House. That's Joe Biden's strongest suit, actually. Hey, how you doing, pal? Good to see you. You know, it just is. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
And Harold,